Hi, this is Mr. Max. So I am doing some algebra work and consider this as revision. So the first question here, I have two equations and you're supposed to solve them simultaneously. And the first equation is linear and the other one has got all these powers of 2, which is quadratic. So it's best perhaps if you can make x the subject of the formula over here, and that would be easier than say you were to do y, because if you make y the subject of the formula, you will have to go divide by these two, and then you might force yourself to work with decimals or fractions. And then in that case, we are now going to substitute every value of where we have an x in the second equation here. I'm going to remove that x and I'm going to replace that with this whole expression over here. Okay, so let's just write that. So it's 2y squared minus x, which I'm going to replace, minus 4, which I'm going to replace, equal to 8. Now again, as I said, I'm going to replace this value of x by 5 minus 2y and 5 minus 2y. All right, so there's a bit of algebra, and make sure that you do not make mistakes with the sign. So this is 2y squared minus, and I'm going to now multiply this y over here first. So that's 5y minus 2y squared minus 4, and I'm going to introduce a square bracket with the normal ones, because this is 5 minus 2y should multiply by itself, okay, binomial expansion. Take note how am I using the brackets. And so before I go there, my next step, obviously there's a negative 1 here, and this is going to give me 2y squared minus 5y, and a negative give you a positive 2y squared minus 4. And now my brackets I'm going to change, because I'm going to multiply this 5 with that 5 over there. That is 25, and 5 times minus 2y, that's minus 10y. And the second term of the first bracket, do the same, multiply with each term in the next bracket, and a negative times a negative gives you a positive, and 2y times 2y is 4y squared. Let that equal to 8. Right? Step by step, very careful that you do not make mistakes. In this particular case, I have the 2y squared plus the 2y squared minus 5y minus 4. So before I take that and distribute that 4 over, I can see that inside the bracket I have got like terms. So minus 10y, take away 10y gives you negative 20y, and then 4y squared over here. And right now, the next order of business would be for me to multiply each term in this quadratic or in this bracket by that negative 4. So this here gives me 4y squared, collecting like terms over there. And negative 4 times 25 is a negative 100. Negative 4 times a negative 20. Very careful, it's positive 80y. A negative times a positive is a negative. 4 times 4y squared is 16y squared equals to 8. All right, so we can actually go ahead and clean up what we have over here. So I'm going to write 4y squared minus 16y squared minus 5y plus 80y minus 100 minus 8 equals to 0. That is when I bring that a to the left. Good. So this gives me negative 12y squared. This gives me positive 75y, because that's 80 take away 5. And this is 100 plus 8, which is negative 108, is equal to 0. Right, so it becomes a quadratic equation. But before I do anything, I am going to divide throughout by negative 3, because I want to simplify that equation. Whether I'm going to use solving it by the means of the completing the square or using the quadratic equation formula, then at least I should have it in simple as possible. And divide by negative, because we don't particularly like this leading term here to be a negative on the y squared. So 3 into 12, that is a 4y squared over there. Negative by a positive, that's a negative, and it's 25y. 3 goes into 75 25 times, and then 3 goes into 108, so negative with a negative positive 36 times, and negative 3 into 0 always gives you um, 0. Of course, I'm just running out of space, so I've added this extra page over here. So I'm just going to write my equation again, and I'm going to then use the quadratic equation formula. But remember, when you use the quadratic equation formula, and the quadratic equation formula is, I have y here is minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, right, so let's go ahead and identify our a value in this equation is 4. Our b value in this equation is negative 25, and our c value is positive 36. So I guess that leaves me with substituting the correct values where they need to be. Please put this in brackets, and it's very important, otherwise you might end up having a totally different answer. All right, I said the value of b is negative 25 over here, and this is a very common mistake that students are doing because they see this minus b. Remember, this whole thing is not that minus b. B itself is negative 25, and this is going to become a positive when you are multiplying it out. Here you can put negative 25, or you can put 25 as long as or provided that you put that in brackets, because it's negative 25 all squared. Do not put the minus outside the bracket. The value of a is 4, and the value of c is 36 over here, and we already determined that a is 4. Okay, right, so it's a matter of punching in, and punching in with one answer. Y will be 4, and another answer, maybe I can say that's y sub 1, and the second answer will be y, which is 9 over 4. I'm going to leave it as an improper fraction. So I'm just going to go back and I'm going to put my answers for y. So y is 4, and the other one we said is 9 over 4. So what I want you to do is I want you to go back to that first linear equation of x equals to 5 minus 2y, okay, to find the values of x. So I'm going to bring that equation back. That equation was x equals to 5 minus 2y. So in the first instance, x would be 5 minus 2, and in the second instance, x would be 5 minus 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and input the values of y that correspond with the value of x here. So if you do that, you'll have an answer for x, which is 5 minus 8. 5 minus 8 is negative 3. And another answer for x would be 5. Take away that, well, of course, it will just give you 1/2. Okay, so when y is 4, x is negative 3, so you can go ahead and put that value over there, and we already determined that answer there was 1/2. Totally up to you, as long as you get to the answers. Right, here you have got an equation. Again, this equation somehow becomes quadratic. But remember, when you have expressions, you need to put this in brackets, okay? And from here, you can sort of cross multiply to remove or to clear the fraction of the brackets. Again, you must be very careful when you are doing this multiplication, okay? And perhaps you do everything step by step so that you do not make a mistake. So I'm going to start with the 2x minus 1 on the left, multiply that with x minus 1 equal to x minus 2 multiplied with x plus 7. Okay, right, so we're going to multiply out the brackets. So this 2x, I'm going to multiply with that. That gives me 2x squared. The 2x times negative 1, that's minus 2x. and I'm going to take the second term, multiply it with each term there, that's a minus x, and a negative times a negative, that gives me positive 1. I'm going to do the same thing over here. That is going to be x squared, and then that x times 7, that gives me 7x, and negative 2 times x, that's minus 2x, and a minus 2 times a positive 7 is minus 14. So let's just collect like terms before we start moving terms over. Okay, and this side here, out of x squared, 7 minus 2, well, that is positive 5x minus 14. Quadratic equations should always equal to 0, so let's just get everything to the left. This is 2x squared, and if I bring its sort of friend or buddy over here, it's going to be a negative value, and I have already my 3x, which is negative on that side. So if I bring its sort of friend, if I can call it, this 5x becomes a minus, and I also have already a plus 1 over here, and if I bring a number that corresponds or a like term, this 14 is negative, so it becomes positive, and everything of course should equal to 0. Alright, so that gives me x squared, that is 2x squared, take away an x squared. This is a minus 8x over here, okay, if you do that, and it's obviously going to be 15 equals to 0. Right, you don't need to use the quadratic equation formula. You can just go ahead and factorize, and because the coefficient here is 1, then you can just open your brackets as is, because no need to do the long story. Put your x over there, put your x over here. The constant term is positive, so I'm looking for two identical negative numbers, and the numbers are negative 3 and negative 5 respectively, because negative 3 times negative 5 will give you 15, and negative 3 plus negative 5 will give you negative 8. Alright, if you multiply and you get a product of 0, it implies that either one number is equal to 0 or the other number is equal to 0. So this is going to be one condition where you have 0 plus 3, or another condition where you have 0 plus 5. So at the end of the day, one answer for x will be 3 and the other answer will be 5. And these are the solutions to the equation. Then I have a very interesting question here. So what you have essentially here, you have a fraction, although it's an algebraic fraction. You were supposed to say for which values of x, it could be values or value of x. So I was supposed to put that in brackets perhaps for this instance. Will this whole fraction equal to 0? For that to be the case, the numerator must equal to 0, because any fraction, when you make the numerator, when you make the numerator 0, you get 0 as an answer. So what I'm doing effectively, I'm taking that numerator and I'm going to let that numerator equal to 0. So what I'm going to say to find that value of x, I'm going to say x plus 1 all squared. I'm going to let that equal to 0. And x plus 1 is equal to 0, because the square root of 0 is just going to be 0. Alright, to remove that square root there. So that means that x would equal to negative 1. So when you punch in negative 1 over here, alright, wherever you have an x, you're going to have 0 as an answer. Okay, so perhaps I just want to show that. So I'll have in bracket, I'm going to say negative 1 plus 1 all squared. That already makes that numerator 0. And even if I were to go here and I put my negative 1 here, this one is irrelevant, because the numerator itself will already become a 0. But just to maybe prove the point to you, for you to see that of course this is simply 0. Okay, so that's the solution. When the question says not defined, for which values of x is this whole fraction not defined, it becomes undefined when the denominator denominator is 0, all right, is 0. If the denominator of any fraction 4 over 0, that answer does not exist, all right, it's undefined, any denominator. So I'm going to take that expression in the denominator and I'm going to let it equal to, so I'm going to make it a quadratic equation, let it equal to 0, so I can calculate what the values of x would be that would make that whole fraction undefined. So again, I hope you know how to factorize, all right, the left hand side. So the coefficient is 1, so no need for you to panic. That's a negative, so one bracket will be a positive, one bracket will be a negative. That is going to be a 2, and that's going to be a negative 3. Okay, x plus 2 and x minus 3. So the solutions will lie x plus 2 will either equal to 0 or x minus 3 will equal to 0. So one answer will be x is negative 2, and another answer will be x is equal to positive 3. So 2, negative 2, and negative 3 are the required solutions that will render this fraction in its entirety undefined. Right, I've got a question here, also a very interesting question. In a test, Isabel scores 88%. She got 3 questions incorrect. How many did she got correct? So let's find the ones that she got incorrect. Let's say, what is the percentage of the incorrect um, answers or questions? Because this 88% represents the one that she scored, that she got correct. So that implies 100 minus 88%. Well, 12% of the questions represents 3 out of something. This x, I'm going to let that represent what the test would be out of. Since I don't know out of what the test is, that I know that she got 3 questions wrong, and that 3 is the same as 12%, all right? So you can do your cross multiplication now in order for you perhaps to find that solution, and x would be that 100 divided by 12 times 3, and I hope you can see where the reverse percentage of this comes around. So the test is out of 25. Okay, so there are 25 questions. Now what do we know? We know that she got 3 questions incorrect, so the questions that she got correct must therefore be 25, which is the total questions that are in the test, minus the 3 questions that she got correct or incorrect. That means she got then 22 questions correct. Okay, and that is the required answer there. Right, it brings me to question 5, so I'm bringing in a little bit of variation or proportion in this question. Now, something worth mentioning, you don't need to know the physics behind what is happening in the story here, as long as you know the most important sentence here is this proportional to, means you're dealing with direct proportion. If a stone is dropped off the edge of a cliff, the height h meters of the cliff is proportional to the square of the time t seconds taken for the stone to reach the ground. That means the height is proportional to t squared. Good. It takes a stone takes 5 seconds to reach the ground when dropped off a cliff of 125 meters. Write down a relationship that exists between h, t, and k. Well, the relationship would be, since h is directly proportional to t squared, h will equal to some constant or variation, multiply that by t squared. So this is the relationship that's going to exist there. And when you have to find that constant that I'm representing with the letter k or variation, I now need this information that I'm given over here. They say the height is 125. The k is what I'm supposed to find. The time is 5 seconds. It should be squared. 5 times 5 is 25k over here, and that is 125. Now, in order for us to find that k, I have to say 125 divided by 25, and my k value is 5. Right. So to do part C, they want to find the height. So let me bring in the correct or completed formula now. The formula is h equals to 5t squared. From our relationship, I now have calculated my k. So they are saying 3 seconds. So it's simple. You just have everywhere you have your t. Now you substitute your t by the time, in this case 3 seconds. All right, so this is going to be 5 times 9, and 5 times 9 is nothing but 45 meters. Using the same formula, h equals to 5t squared, they now give us the height of 180 meters, and that is 5t squared. So again, we need to calculate the value of t. So very straightforward. T squared is 180 divided by 5, right? That gives me t squared is equal to 36. Well, t would then be the square root of 36, which is 6 seconds. All right, so take your time and try out the questions. Here is another very interesting question. A swimming pool is filled in 30 hours by 2 identical pumps. So let me just use my ratio method to compare. So I know that the number of pumps, 2 identical pumps, and let's suppose this is the time, and this time here is in hours. It takes 2 pumps 30 hours to fill the swimming pool. How much quicker would it be if you use 5 similar pipes? So 5 under the pipes, I will put X here. Quicker. What this tells you is the question here is sort of an inverse proportion question, because when you increase the number of pumps to 5, the time would be less. As one increases, the other one decreases, so it's inverse. So when I do my multiplication or my calculation, I would go vertically. So I would be saying x would be 2 times 30 divided by 5. This would give me the value of x, and 2 times 30 is 60. 60 divided by 5, 12 hours. Of course, you can find one pump and then multiply that by 5, or it will still give you the same answer. The last question, kind of very interesting. All right, so I also realized when I was giving the students this question, I made a small mistake over here, but I rectified it here. All right, it says that maybe I need to do the same. I may still have the mistake over there, so let me just rectify this here. So it has to be 50 heads. Okay, it is 50 legs, I mean, and it must be 18 heads. All right, so um, it's an honest mistake, so let's just have that maybe just to correct that little bitty there, so we don't have it as something when you are going through this, so you are not getting confused. So that would be replaced by 50 legs and 18 heads. Of course, perhaps I must do that. Okay, so it's 50 legs and 18 heads. Right, so that now makes the question a little bit easier to understand. So a farmer has donkeys. Let D be for donkeys and chickens C for chickens. He sees 18 heads. All right. So the total number of animals at the farm has to be 18. A donkey has got 4 legs and a chicken has got 2 legs. All right. Provided we don't have disabled things over there. Okay. So these are the 2 equations that I just created, and we're going to solve them simultaneously. So it's totally up to you what method you want to use, but I'm going to multiply the whole of equation A by 4 perhaps, okay, just so I can eliminate. So that's going to be 4d when you multiply here by 4, plus multiplying this by 4, that's going to give you 4c. And if you multiply 18 by 4, now remember you have got 40 um, plus 32. Okay, let's just make sure we don't make an error. It's just 18 times 4. Okay, that gives you 72. 72 is correct. So I just take the first equation and I just sort of multiplied it by 4. So maybe I will call this equation now equation C. Doesn't really matter. It's a mathematically equivalent equation, equation A. Right. So this other one was 4D plus 2C equals to 50. That happened to be that equation. So I'm going to take equation B and I'm going to subtract it from equation C in order to eliminate my D's. And if I do that, this is going to eventually give me something like, this is cancelling, 4c minus 2c is 2c, and 72 minus 50, that is 22, all right? And what this allows me is to find the chickens, and 22, 2c equals 22, and c will be 22 divided by 2, so there are 11 chickens in this farm. Now, if you have the number of donkeys plus the number of chickens, the donkeys plus the chickens is 18, and we just saw that we have 11 chickens, then it means the number of donkeys should be 18 minus 11, which in this case means 7. So there are 7 donkeys at this farm. Okay. So good luck, and remember, always try to do the questions before you just look directly at the video. You can pause and then you can try to do the questions on your own.